Hey guys, and welcome back. So I've been so excited about filming this one. It's been in the planning for a long time as this project, and I've just been desperate to share with you what I have been planning to make. So the next project that I'm going to make is a trench coat. It feels like way like out of my league at the moment, but I'm sure we'll learn as we go along. Hopefully using similar skills to what the blazer did, but in a much bigger scale. So I'm very excited. I'll show you sort of like the pattern, the fabrics, what my plans are, and then we're going to have a look at the alterations I want to make. Because true to my own style, I want to alter the pattern, make it completely mine, and include some of the features I've seen on other coats that I'm absolutely in love with and obsessed with. So let's get started. So rather than going straight in and showing you pattern and fabric, I want to show you where my inspiration has come from, and then it explains some of the alterations that I want to make. So one coat that I saw a long time ago, maybe even last year, is a coat from Woollen Cooper, and I absolutely fell in love with it for the little details. So it is this one. I'll do my absolute best to show you. So it's this one, and it's black, and then it's got a tan leather to basically add a contrast. So it's got it on some of the cuff details, it's got it under the collar, it's got it on its, I'm going to call it a gun plate, it's something along them lines, that bit there, and the flap at the back. And I just loved it. I loved the contrast, although I did know that I didn't want to make a black coat. So I didn't want to do a direct copy of that, because I already have a sort of a trench coat style, but it's not as long, and it's in a sort of deep navy blue with a maroon piping. So I knew that I didn't want to go dark on the colouring. I wanted to go for more of a tan camel colour, to add something different in my wardrobe and be able to wear it on different occasions. So that's the first point of inspiration. The second coat that I loved was one from Dior. Again, I'll see if I can show you, and I'll pop pictures up if I can't show you properly. And I loved this for the shape of the flappy gum bits here, and also on the back of this coat it had really beautiful pleating. So it's got a pleat right down the centre of the back flap. It's also got pleats down into the skirt to give it more volume. So that was something that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at my pattern. So bearing those in mind, bearing in mind what I wanted to achieve, I chose a pattern. It's not a brand I've heard of before, but it's this one here it's the Woollen Trench Coat. And it's got sort of all the features that I was looking at. So it's like a full length one, it's got the back flaps, it's got the gun flaps, it's double breasted on the buttons, it's got a belt, really perfect for what I want, although there are a few changes and little tweaks that I want to make. So I've never seen a pattern so big and so well packaged. I've not had a proper look at it yet, so I'm going to sort of go through it properly with you. But inside we have got a booklet telling us what to do, and then we've got 3 full pages of pattern pieces. So this is what I'm going to have a look at altering with you today and cutting out. But it looks like there's going to be a lot of pattern pieces, and it's going to be a big one to cut out. So that's the pattern that I've got. In terms of fabric, I got lots of samples and took a long time. As I say, this has been in the planning for months and months and months, and I took a long time deciding on what I wanted. So I knew that I wanted it a camel-y or a tan colour, and the fabric that I've gone for is this one. So it's a woolen fabric from Croft Mill. As always, I'll link everything down below, so that you can have a look, although I do think I bought them out of this. I originally ordered 4 meters and they ended up ringing me, great customer service and everything, but saying that they only had 3.8 and was that enough, which fingers crossed fingers crossed 3.8 meters is enough. But it's this lovely fabric. It's got a really nice thickness to it. It's not going to be too thick, so I think I'll still be able to get a really good shape and a good drape off it. Because I didn't want anything too bulky. I want to look stylish and quite chic in my coat. I don't want to feel like I'm an Eskimo and I'm like fully bulked up and layered, which I know, style over practicality, but we are coming into spring. It is quite late to make a trench coat, but it's just when I've had time to do it. So we've got this fabric, which is a really, really beautiful camel colour. So that's going to be for the bulk of the coat. Then, as I say, I really liked a contrast. So I have got this. It's a cognac leather, basically a browny orangey faux leather, which I think will look really, really lovely with this fabric. Properly sets it off, but it still keeps it nice and neutral tones, really easy to wear. So I fancy doing this for the under collar, probably for like the flaps and bib type section at the top. Probably do some like piping around the pockets to like bring it down a little bit, do it on the buckles and the cuffs, and yeah, we'll do anything we can do an accent fabric for, we're going to do in this, and hopefully it will make the coat look slightly different and just set off the main fabric really beautifully. So this one was from Minerva Fabrics. It was, as I say, I got loads of samples because I didn't know what I was buying. This was classed as a heavyweight faux leather, although it's still got a lot of movement in it. Like, it doesn't feel too heavy for this fabric, which is what I was worried about, because this obviously isn't the heaviest of wools, although it's still got a good coat thickness to it. I don't think this one will be too heavy to pair with it. I think they'll work really nicely together. And then for the lining, I didn't really want the lining to be forgotten, because if I'm going all out and doing a fancy coat, I want the lining to look really, really fancy too. So what I went for was this one, which again was from Croft Mill. I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but it's like a champagne-y colour with a blue spot going through it. But it just complements the fabrics really. So got camel fabric, lining and accent fabric, and it all sort of works nicely together. Feels like it could look really expensive, which is what we want, and hopefully it's just going to look beautiful and feel really nice. This fabric for a lining, it's a nicer quality lining fabric than what I've used before. I've kind of used like for really, really cheap, like £2 a metre lining fabrics before, which are fine. Once they're in a garment you don't really notice as much, but this was that a slightly higher price point. It wasn't too expensive. I can't remember the pricing. As I say, everything will be linked down below, and I'll probably talk about it later or in a separate video. But yeah, I think this one will look really, really nice, and it's just that bit thicker and nicer feeling. So it is going to fray like mad, but so is every lining fabric. So we'll deal with that. That's the other thing I was going to say is, fraying wise, this wool doesn't look like it's going to fray at all, and the leather won't fray. So I've just got the lining fabric to deal with, which when I was making my blazer, the fraying of the main fabric was one of the biggest problems that I had. So hopefully this will make it a little bit easier to construct on this coat. But we're learning as we go along, so that's fine. We can deal with it. So yeah, those are the fabrics, and now I'm going to measure myself, and then I'm going to talk you through what alterations I'd like to make. Alterations for size and fit, and then alterations for aesthetics and what I want it to look like. Okay, so measurements wise, you want to take a lot more than the pattern asks you for, and a lot more than you think that you'll need. So think about where a coat needs to fit you, and sort of where the main points of fitting are. So I've written a list of what I think that I need to take, which is shoulder to shoulder measurement, so from here to here where you want it to sit, and that's going to be taken along the back, not along the front. So shoulder to shoulder along your back. I've gone with sleeve length, so I'm quite a tall girl, so I don't necessarily take it for granted that the sleeves are going to be long enough. So I'll go from top of the shoulder down to where I'd like the sleeves to fit, and I'll probably make sure I'm slightly longer on the measurement than I need to be, just because it's a lot easier to take something up than it is to add fabric. I'm going to go with chest measurement, so around here. You need to be able to make sure you can move your arms nicely when you're wearing the garment. So I'm going to do chest measurement and bust measurement, make sure it actually covers what it needs to. We're going to go waist, so that I can get a nice tailored fit and make sure it fits my waist properly. Then we're going to go waist to the neck, so that's up the back to the nape of the neck down to your waist, and that will make sure that you can get your sort of belt loops and any waist details in the right places. And then the final one I've got is from the nape of the neck down the back to where the garment wants to sit. So I want it to sit sort of a midi length, almost fully to the ankle. So I want it quite long, because something that my other coat doesn't do. My other coat probably comes down to like knee length, but if you're wearing a midi length dress, it just looks a bit strange. Whereas if your coat is longer than your dress, it all sits a lot better in unison. So that's what I want this coat to be able to do, is sit better with any length of dress rather than looking a bit strange. So we're also going to work out what length we want the coat to be. So I'm going to take these. I'll probably take a lot of them off camera because I'm going to need a second pair of hands for like the full length one. It's very difficult to just do on yourself. So I'm going to take the measurements and then I'll come back to you and we'll have a look at the pattern pieces. Okay, so I've done the measurements and I know what size I'm going to cut this out at, but I forgot a key measurement. You need to do your hips as well. Completely forgot about the hips, so measure your hips as well. That is one of the measurements that's needed on this pattern. So I'm going to cut mine out to a UK size 10. The waist measurement's a little bit out on that, but I can bring that in. But it fits on the bust and the hips, which is the two bigger parts to fit on. So that's what I'm going to cut it out to. I'm going to cut the pattern out, and then we'll have a look at where it needs altering and how we're going to do that. It feels like a lot later now. There was about 25 pattern pieces to cut, so don't do this in a rush. It will take a lot of time. But we're all cut out now, and we're going to check the actual fit of the pieces before we change anything for the details. So I have, you can't see, I'll see whether I can move the camera in a sec. So I have the back, the main back piece in front of me, and I'm going to measure sort of the length of that and see whether it comes close to my measurement for the nape of my neck down to where I want the garment to sit. Okay, you're really going to have to excuse the mess. I have paper everywhere from cutting this pattern. But hopefully you can see the piece I'm looking at now. So I'm going to get my tape measure. I had a measurement of 49 inches. So I know there's going to be a seam allowance on this, but I'm going to go from the neck of there down to the bottom. It has quite a big hem allowance shown on this piece, probably 1.5 inches, but the 49 inches is sitting about where the hem allowance is. So will there be a little bit of seam allowance off the top which will make this slightly shorter? Yes, but there will also be a collar which will build that up a little bit. So I'm actually going to leave the length of this exactly how it is. But you just want to check your pattern piece, go straight down and check that the length is okay. I'm then going to do the same with the sleeve length. Pop that one to one side. So we have 4 different pattern pieces for the sleeve. We have the outer pattern pieces and then the lining pattern pieces. I think by looking at it, the outer ones are longer because it's going to fold up and meet your lining on the inside so that your lining's not visible at any point. So I'm going to measure against the outer pattern piece, and it shows where the hem allowance is on that as well. So because it's a bigger hem, it shows you where it is. So I'm going to take from right at the top of the shoulder, which is sort of the highest part of the curve, So I'm going to take a measure from there, and I'm going to go down to the hem allowance. So that is showing at about 24.5 inches, which my measurement was 24 inches. So again, that should be absolutely fine. If you were altering the sleeve, you'd alter it on one piece, get a straight cut along, alter it nice and evenly on both sides, and then you do exactly the same for all your other pattern pieces. So you actually have the undersleeve for both the outer and the lining, and then you have the top part of the sleeve for the outer and the lining. So all 4 pattern pieces would need changing. Same if you were doing the length of the coat, you'd change and measure it on the back, because that's the straight piece that's easy to measure. Because round the front you've got other things going on, you've got boobs and hips to fit around, whereas the back's sort of the straightest piece where you can get your measurement from. So you'd measure it on your back, you'd add in the piece, and then whatever you add in there, you add in exactly the same on any other pieces. So your 2 front pieces, your other side of your back, however the pattern works. So you need to make sure that you're doing the same consistently on everything, and also on the lining. So I think we're happy. As I said when I was measuring up, I've gone for a sizing that will fit hopefully my hips and my bust, and then I'll take it in when I'm actually sewing it for the waist. So I'm not going to do any pattern alterations for that, because it's a lot easier to take it in down the side seams and the back to give that tapered look, rather than trying to work out on a pattern how much you need to take in. So that's how I'm going to do that. The next thing that I'm going to look at is the flap section at the top. So I showed you earlier, but I'll pop up on screen. I saw a picture of a Dior trench coat. I like to look at the highest sort of price point possible as far as garments I want to make for inspiration, because why not? Like, the materials aren't going to cost any more. So if there's slight design details that say Dior or Chanel are making on their garments that I want to include, it doesn't cost anything. So anyway, the Dior trench coat I loved. I loved it because it had quite a smart cut to it, so it was a lot straighter on the top section than this pattern was. This one's quite curved, but it has all the pieces in place. So I decided to go with this pattern because I knew that I wanted that sort of flap section, and I thought that it would be quite easy to straighten off the cut of the pieces. So I'm going to have a look at those next. For the bib section, I keep calling it a bib section, what's it called? Cape section, that's what the pattern calls it. It's called a cape. So we've got the back piece, which is cut on the fold, so that's for the entire back, and then we have the front piece here. So from the front of the pattern and from this piece, it comes up with a curve and then it curves around like that. So I'd like it to come a lot more straight across and straight down. So I'm going to alter this, and then we can sort of adjust it as we're making it. I've got enough fabric that if I don't do it right the first time, it doesn't matter too much, but we're going to try and get it right. So we're going to straighten off the front bit, and then for the back bit, if the front's straightened off, then this one's straightening off at the bottom as well. But I'd also quite like to add the fabric in that I can have a pleat down the centre. So that will just be a chunk of fabric that will then get folded in, so it's not affecting the overall shape or size of this at all. It's just going to be hidden in a box pleat. But it will just add a little bit of extra something, a little bit of an extra feature, and I think that could look really nice. I'm not overly worried about altering patterns, because if I alter a pattern, I can always see the outline of the original pattern. So if it doesn't work, I can always just take out the extra paper and stick it all back together. So I'm not somebody who likes to re-sketch and recut completely. I'll just sort of add in bits and cut in a bit of extra. If you were worried about it, you can draw around it, cut an extra piece, have a completely different pattern piece. But I've always just been somebody who's just absolutely fine with cutting into my pattern pieces and adding the extra paper in. So hopefully you can see here I have stuck the back pattern piece onto some wrapping paper in the areas that I'm going to alter. So I have stuck it down this side where I'm going to add in the fabric for a box pleat, and I have stuck it down the bottom where I'm going to shape off this bottom edge. So where did my tape go? It's hiding over there. So I need to decide on how much of a box pleat I want. Bearing in mind this is sitting on the centre line, so it will be double to what I do. I am thinking that about 1.5 inches would probably sit right. That would make it 3 inches folded in. It could go bigger actually. No, we're going to go to 2 inches. That allows 4 inches for the pleat. Fold into the centre, you get a 2-inch pleat in there. So I think that will look really good actually. So yeah, we're going to go 2 inches down here. So I'm going to mark that all the way along. Then I can join the dots when I'm cutting it. I could be a lot more exact with this. I could get a ruler out. I'm not going to because I don't think I need to. But I can easily join the dots and cut the straight line down there. So then on this bottom edge, I still want it to come down as far as here. So we're going to go along and straighten it up. I'm thinking with this it will come down a bit straighter. Then I might just... No, I'm going to follow the line down here, because if there's excess material I can always put it into the seam, get rid of it, rather than the other way around where I'm not having enough. So I'm going to follow the seam down there, and then I'm going to straighten this off at the bottom. So that is going to go along there, and that is what I'm going to cut out. As I say, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, and I'll update you on the make. But I can easily see the original pattern, and I can easily go back to the original pattern. So it's not something that's going to stress me out or worry me as to whether it's going to work or not. So I'm going to cut this piece out, and then I'll have a look at the front. That is the first pattern piece all cut out now, and so we're going to move on to the front. So because we have elongated the side of this back pattern piece, we're going to have to match it on the front. So I'm going to put a little mark in there of where this needs to come to. So that's coming down further. And then going to straighten this up. So I've got slightly squared paper, so that should help me keep a straight line. So that's 1 centimetre in. So 1 centimetre in is there. So that's sort of our box line that we're going off. And then we're going to look at, can you still see that? We're going to look at this front edge. So I want to make sure that it comes down straight and it gets hidden underneath the collar and lapels. So if we have a look at the pattern, we can see that it's roughly underneath the lapels, but then it curves out far too early. It's shown in the sketch drawing next to it as well. So if I bring it straight down, it should, but maybe it needs to come out to an angle because they're angled. So we're going to add a bit more. So I'm thinking that that's currently going in like that. The lapels are coming down like that. So I think that I need to move to about that point there. So if I go straight along there, down there, and then do a diagonal down that point, we shouldn't be that far off on shape. So we're going to try that. As I say, I've got enough fabric. I should do anyway. I've got about 1.5 meters of the brown, and this is one of the bigger pieces that the brown leather has got to do. So we'll try that, and if we need to alter it, then we'll find out from that point. I might cut it out of calico as well before I cut the leather. That might be the best idea. If I do it in calico, then when I come to making the coat, I can see how that's fitting and decide whether I need to make the pattern piece bigger. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to cut them out of the leather straight away. I'm going to wait, cut them out of calico, try them on the coat, and then I can adjust on the size accordingly. So those are the altered cape sections. So we've got the front and the back pieces. The next thing, and sort of the last thing before I cut fabric that I need to decide, is exactly what I'm cutting out of which fabric. So as far as the leather, I know that I want to do the cape sections. I'll show you on this one, it's easier to see. The cape sections definitely want to be in the brown leather. I want to do the under collar as brown leather because I think once you put your collar up, it looks really, really smart. I also want to do the sort of cuff details in brown leather, so we've got the little straps on there, and I don't think we have epaulets on this one. No, it doesn't look like it. So I'm going to do the little cuff straps in brown leather. I'm probably going to add in a pocket detail, but I don't think there's a pattern piece for that. So I'll probably put a little piping line down the pocket, but there's not a pattern piece for that, so I'll add that in later. And then I want one side of the belt to be brown leather and then the other side to be wool. So then I can pick and choose exactly which side I want to wear it, how I want to wear it. So yeah, that is what I've decided on those. So now all I've got to do is cut out the fabric and then we can start making. So that'll be about all for this video. I'm going to leave you on a little cutting montage. But yeah, I'm very, very excited about this make. As you can tell, there's lots to learn, there's lots I'm a little bit unsure on, but we'll learn it all together. The next video is going to be the full construction of the garment. Very, very excited to get it started. I really hope you enjoy this one, and I'll see you soon. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. As I say, the next video will be me making this coat. We've got loads of really, really great makes coming up over the spring and summer, which I'm very excited about. We post every fortnight on this channel, so please come join me, and thank you for joining me for this one. I love you all, and I'll see you soon. Bye.